All right, everyone. So, hello, you guys. Welcome to the third day of Global Week of Action that is brought to you by MUN Impact. Now, before debriefing about our plans for today, for preserving everyone's privacy, please keep your mics on mute and cameras off until later on onto the Q&A part, where you can then unmute your microphones and ask your questions. So today we've invited one of our potential partners, Climate Cardinals, which is an international youth-led nonprofit working to make the climate movement more accessible to those who don't speak English, and they aim to educate and empower a diverse coalition of people to tackle the climate crisis. We have Noman here today as a representative of this organization, and he'll be driving today's session onwards. So, without any further ado, let's welcome Noman. Everyone, please give him a round of applause with the reaction on Zoom. And Noman, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to get this running with you. Let me share my screen and we'll begin. All right. All right, so before we begin, I did want to just give a quick introduction to myself as well as a quick roadmap of the things that I will be discussing. So obviously my name is Naman. I'm representing Climate Cardinals and I'm so excited to really get this show running and get this presentation going. So this presentation is mostly going to focus on climate change, deforestation, and biodiversity loss. And it's also going to give some ways that we can take action against the negative impacts of these disturbances. Throughout the presentation, it's going to be more interactive. So I have a few Kahoots. I also have a few videos that will hopefully keep you guys engaged. And I'll also give you guys the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation. But again, before we begin, I did want to just give a quick introduction to me as well as Climate Cardinals. All right, so by using the raising hand option, how many of you guys are interested in fighting climate change? Okay, we have a few hands. Okay, cool. And how and by using raise of hands again, how many of you guys speak a language that is not English? All right, so we have a lot of hands. Okay, cool. So essentially what Climate Cardinals does is they combine those two things. So its mission, obviously, as Reem already introduced, is making the climate movement more accessible to those who don't speak English. One of the ways that we accomplish this is obviously through translation of important climate documents that are usually in English into other languages. Just as a bit of promo for Climate Cardinals, we currently house over 100 languages. We're based in 41 countries, and we've translated over 500,000 words. And my personal experience with Climate Cardinals is last summer I worked as a language lead and a translator. I translated over 30 hours of climate documents from English to Mongolian. And I also worked in resources, which basically just meant I found climate resources for Mongolian audiences for easier access. So if you guys are interested in this opportunity, I will be answering more questions at the end of the presentation. All right, so with that all being said, let's begin the presentation with climate change and deforestation. So why focus on climate change? Why do we need to be consciously aware of climate change, as well as finding solutions to it? Well, the answer, at least in my eyes, is very simple. We are the driving force behind climate change, especially at this rate. If we don't slow down climate change or stop at least the man-driven component of it, which is the large majority of it as it stands today, we won't have a healthy planet to live on anymore. Before we get started with the actual content, I did want to just do a quick little Kahoot to just gauge the level of everybody's knowledge on this topic. It is on National Geographic, so I will, sorry. Okay. All right, so if you guys could join the Kahoot, not from the link in the chat, but from this screen, that would be great.
Sorry to open my microphone, but it's just to say that I'll join like in 1 minute. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's totally fine. And just a reminder, although there are links in the chat, make sure to join the code that you see on the screen. Just go to kahoot.it, and then it'll lead you to a screen where you can insert codes or game pins. All right, so I'm gonna start the Kahoot. So if you guys really wanted to join, you'll have the opportunity to join after we start. So let's get started. All right, so the first question is, how are climate change and global warming related? All right, so 6 of you got that right. Global warming has not overtaken climate change, but it does cause climate change. All right, so we have Krishnam in the lead, and Noor with a close second. All right, let's go to the next question. An example of climate refugees would be people who have had to move because of right, so most of you got that right. Let's see the leaderboard. All right, so Noor has overtaken. All right. Next question. The Keeling curve. All right, we're not going to discuss this, but you can guess. All right, truthfully, I didn't really know until I looked more into it. So it's okay if you got it wrong. All right, Pardeep has the highest answer streak. And Giovanna is overtaking everybody. All right, next question. So one example of a consequence of climate change would be Right, so a lot of you got that wrong. The greenhouse effect is something that would contribute to climate change, as we'll talk about more later. But the three of you got that right. I'm very proud. All right, Pardeep, highest answer streak. Good job, good job. All right, next question. Again, truthfully, I didn't really know much about keeling, so don't worry if you got that question wrong. All right, Pardeep, still in the lead. Next question. The concept of the carbon bathtub is that. All right, most of you got that right, so I'm proud. All right. Question 7. What factors might increase someone's chance of health risks related to climate change? All right, so most of you, like a vast majority of you guys got that right. All right, let's get the scoreboard. All right, Pardeep still in first place. Brian coming up. All right, question 8. All right, this is not going to be, I'm just going to skip this question because I don't think any of you guys would really know. All right, and which effect of climate change presents the most serious threat to coastal cities? Right, so again, most of you, like a vast majority of you guys got that right, and it is sea level rise because the others wouldn't really apply to coastal cities. And the final question is, which is an example of a renewable energy resource? All right, so a majority of you guys got that right. Only one person got it wrong, but I think they just misread what the question was. All right, so let's see who's on the podium. All right, Giovanna, third place. Good job. You have Brian in second place, and I think I know who's going to be in first place with a 9 out of 9. Yep, Pardeep. All right, good job, everyone. Don't worry about the questions necessarily. We won't be discussing all of them, but it's a good way to sort of gauge how much climate information you know and how well informed you are about climate change. So if you didn't get all this question right, obviously don't worry. It's just a way to gauge how much information that you already know. But hopefully I will at least give you some sort of insight into other information today. All right, so before we begin, I did want to just watch a quick video. It's a 4-minute video. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bill Nye, but he had a show back in, I believe it was the 90s, where he just explains a lot of scientific concepts. So let me know if you guys can hear it. You should be able to, but let me know if you can't hear it.
We hear it so much that it feels like a buzzword, but it is far from it. Climate change is a real and serious issue. But isn't the climate always changing? What exactly is climate change, and why should we care? Well, the Earth's climate has changed throughout history. Most of these slight changes are caused by small variations in the Earth's orbit. But climate change as we know it today is characterized by an abrupt increase in the Earth's temperature. It is estimated to have gotten 1.2 to 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in just the last century. 10 out of the last 13 years were the warmest on record. 97% of climate scientists agree that this new tendency is not caused by the variations of the Earth's orbit, but rather very likely caused by human activities. That means you and me. And since the Industrial Revolution, we have come a long way. Humans built airplanes, faster cars, developed remarkable technology, and learned how the natural resources around us can be used for our benefit. Although this has led to many wonderful inventions and advancements, like the device you're using to watch this video, or the ability to take a plane halfway around the world, it also means we've increased our consumption of natural resources and in turn released a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now, greenhouse gases occur naturally, but in excess can be dangerous to our planet. Modern human activities have increased the release of non-naturally occurring greenhouse gases because we have stepped up our demand for burning fossil fuels. The composition of greenhouse gases traps heat radiated from the sun. The more heat they trap, the warmer our planet gets. And as our planet gets warmer, we begin to feel the effects. One of climate change's biggest victims is our oceans. Oceans regulate the Earth's temperature and provide 50% of the Earth's oxygen. Now, climate change has increased the global temperature of the oceans by more than 0.3 degrees Fahrenheit since 1969. Although a warmer ocean might seem inviting to a beachgoer, it actually has devastating consequences for supporting life at sea. One of those consequences is ocean acidification, a direct effect of increased dissolved CO2. Since the late 18th century, ocean surface acidification has increased by 30%. A higher acid content means calcifying species, like oysters and clams and shallow water corals, are at risk, putting the entire ocean food web at risk. This is bad news for the 1 billion people relying on the ocean as its primary source of protein. Climate change has also caused the sea level to rise. Just in the last century, sea levels have risen 6.7 inches, but the rate in the last decade has nearly doubled. Sea levels have risen because as the ocean gets warmer, it swells. On top of that, glaciers and ice sheets are melting. Antarctica lost 36 cubic miles of ice between 2002 and 2005, and since 1994, each year on average, the Earth has lost 400 billion tons from its glaciers. That's like an ice cube 7.5 kilometers on a side, 4 miles on a side, melting and flowing into the sea. When all that ice melts, it fills up our oceans, and just like filling up a bathtub, the shores can't hold all that water, and coastal regions get flooded. Troubling signs of climate change are increased extreme weather events. Natural disasters like floods, tornadoes, and deadly heat waves are more obvious to humans because of their immediate impact and their sharing of the images in the media. Climate change, as we know it today, is change in our Earth's overall temperature with massive and permanent ramifications. Although its consequences can be planet-threatening, scientists still believe there are things we can do on a personal level to help. Recycle and reuse things. Walk or use public transportation to get to work. Turn off your electronics when you're not using them. Eat less meat. While you're at it, eat more locally grown vegetables and foods. And last but not least, spread your knowledge and concerns about climate change with others. When it comes to climate change, the main takeaway is that it's real. And although we are part of the cause, we can also be part of the solution. We hear it so much that it feels like a...
Right, so hopefully that video was informative for you guys. As Bill Nye already explains, he does go a little bit into the cyclical nature of climate change. And although the Earth does cyclically become warmer and then cooler, going through warming and cooling cycles, this is not the reason that we have to act against climate change. Research shows that we're supposed to be in a cooling cycle right now. And because of human activity, we basically are not cooling at all. We're only getting warmer. And obviously you guys have heard the term climate change and global warming. And as the Kahoot already says, global warming drives climate change. And then just to add on to this, 97% of climate scientists agree that human activities since the Industrial Revolution are the sole contributor to the severity of the climate issue that we face today. So,
we hear it so much.
So as the video already, sorry, this is just another recap of what I said. But as the video touches on at the end, climate change exacerbates environmental disturbances. So do you guys know what the environmental disturbances are? You don't have to respond necessarily, but if you do, just let me know in the chat so I know I can gauge how many of you guys are familiar. But if you aren't familiar with environmental disturbances, they are essentially temporary changes in environmental conditions that cause a pronounced change in the ecosystem. So examples of environmental disturbances include wildfires, storms, flooding, invasive species, earthquakes, eruptions, tsunamis, and then human activities such as deforestation and clear cutting. So obviously from the examples that I just gave, you can make a clear distinction between natural disturbances like hurricanes, tsunamis, of that sort, and then anthropogenic disturbances or disturbances that we contribute to very directly, such as deforestation and clear cutting. So first, I want to examine natural disturbances. So research shows that natural disturbances are occurring at a higher frequency, and although it's still sort of a debated topic within the climate science realm, it seems that the reason for more extreme and frequent natural disturbances is human-influenced change in climate. Climate change has driven a 5-fold increase in the number of weather-related incidents over the past 50 years, which means that as disasters are happening, they're happening simultaneously and they're becoming more severe. So natural disturbances such as hurricanes, tornadoes, and wildfires, to name a few, are not only increasing in number, they're also becoming more severe and they are increasing in size. And although, again, I do want to say that the topic is still being debated, it's highly likely that there is the cause of the increase in severity, size, and simultaneous nature of these disturbances is climate change. And I did want to just go over some of the impacts of these exacerbated or exaggerated natural disturbances because of climate change. So obviously, natural disturbances can decimate an area's economy and human ecosystem. I live in the US, so an example for me would be Hurricane Ida that happened recently. As I was doing research, I found out that its cost could be up to 95 billion USD, making it only the 7th deadliest hurricane since 2000. And obviously Hurricane Ida and any hurricane or any storm destroys and floods homes as well as businesses. So obviously the impact of greater of a natural disturbance that is greater in size and greater in severity is going to be very dangerous. And then another impact that I feel that we don't discuss enough is the psychological impact of increased natural disturbances in terms of scope and size. A poll conducted by the American Psychiatric Association last year showed that 70% of adults in the US are somewhat anxious about climate change and what it will do to the planet. Essentially, the impacts of greater and more exacerbated natural disturbances will have drastic changes in the economic, human, and psychological realms. All right, so with that all being said, I did want to just take a look at some of these charts. And with the information that I've just given you, with the information that climate change is making disasters, especially natural disasters, greater in size and greater in severity, and they are happening more frequently, we can see that countries that are already reporting a lot of disasters are going to be at risk for greater damage. That includes China, India, the US, even Russia, some South American countries, Australia. And then this graph shows the cause. You can see as we get closer to present day, there's a lot of, you can see there's sort of an increase in the climatological cause. Obviously, you still have other causes, but you can see there's a trend, there's an upward trend in these causes. And then this shows the damage that is done by disasters. Obviously, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hurricane Katrina that happened, I believe in 2007, but we have New Orleans, we have cities in Ecuador, India, and China. And then these are essentially the places that natural disasters have had the greatest cost. And we can see from these that if, again, climate change is driving up the severity, scope, and frequency of these natural disasters, it's going to have a massive human toll and impact in the realms of the economy, as we can see in this slide here, human resources and the human ecosystem in homes and businesses, which also relates back to the economy, and as well as increasing climate anxiety. All right. And with all of that being said, I want to do another Kahoot. The first Kahoot was sort of just as a gauge of the knowledge that you guys have, but this one will be more about what we've just discussed. But don't worry, there's another Kahoot at the end, near the end. So if you don't place, or if you didn't do as well as you thought you would, you'll have another chance to score on the leaderboard. All right, so your new Kahoot will be, if you just give me a second. All right, so make sure you go to kahoot.it and your game pin is going to be 3198635. All right, so again, if you missed this time, you can go ahead and join later on, but I'm just going to start it. All right, so what is the primary source of energy for the Earth's climate system? All right, so I'm just gonna skip the question. All right, most of you got that right. It is the sun. However, it seems that oil and gas might have tricked you there. All right. All right, Arian in the lead. All right. All right, why are greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane important to Earth's climate? All right, let's see. All right, so some of you were tricked by that question, but remember that greenhouse gases trap the sun's energy so that the Earth becomes warmer. But the other answer would have been a good guess as well. All right, let's see who's on the scoreboard. All right, Manasi, first place. All right. So what happens when CO2 and other greenhouse gases increase in our atmosphere? Hopefully you will know what the answer is based on the answer to the previous question. All right, so most of you got that right. Again, it might have tricked you if you didn't get the previous question right, so no worries if you didn't get it right. But the average global temperature increases, hence why human activities driving up greenhouse gases have warmed the climate. All right, Manasi in first place, and Zaz with an answer streak. Good job. All right. A primary reason we know that human activity is causing global warming is all right, again, human activities driving up greenhouse gases. I can't quite see. Yeah, so most of you clicked all answer choices are correct. However, CO2 in the atmosphere has not decreased over the past 10 years because it has increased. But it's okay if you got that wrong. Again, it might have tricked you with the wording there. All right, let's see. All right, Gigi and Zaz and zeros, Nasi and Noor. All right, good job, guys. All right, question 5. These observations inform us that the Earth's average temperature is increasing except, and make sure you pay close attention to the wording. All right, I'm actually not sure why that's correct. I think this was a misclick, but if you clicked 7, you are correct as well. So I don't know why. Sorry about that. All right, next question. All right, the following human activities produce greenhouse gases except. All right, so most of you got that right. I think that, again, the wording is just tripping you up. But driving cars definitely releases greenhouse gases, and it's one of the main contributors as well. All right. All right, Gigi, Zeros, Party, Bzaz, and Noor. So they're all in the lead. Good job. All right. Which of the following is an exception or is an example of climate?
At this very moment, all around the world, people are experiencing all kinds of weather. People are also experiencing climate, which is related to the weather, but there's an important difference. That difference is really just a matter of time. Weather happens day to day, even hour to hour, and is still pretty unpredictable. Climate happens over longer periods of time, 30 years and longer, and is usually predictable. In a nutshell, climate can be described as the average weather over time.
All right, so most of you, a vast majority of you guys got that right. And that was just partially paying attention to the video as well as using some of the prior knowledge that you know. All right, how do scientists get climate and weather data? All right, we're not really concerned with this. And which is following is an example of weather. Hopefully you guys will understand this. All right, Gigi in the lead. All right, what is this question? Okay, will climate change impacts be the same in all locations on Earth? Right, so most of you got that right. Again, we all live in different places. These places have different conditions, both human and otherwise. So yes, the impacts will vary depending on where you are. All right, and this is the second to last question. How does the ozone layer impact life on Earth? Again, okay, we're not really concerned with this. Okay, and how can we make a difference? All right, so most of you got that right. But if you didn't get it right, it was probably just because you wanted to click as fast as you could, but all of the answers are correct. All right, let's look at the podium. All right, number 3, we have Noor, good job. You're also in the leaderboard for the last Kahoot, zeros. And Gigi, all right, good job, guys. And runners up, Pardeep and Manasi. It's okay, guys, you can get it next time. All right, so going back to the slideshow. Hold on, give me one moment. Oh. All right, so now let's talk about deforestation. So I have a quick video, but I think I will just go ahead and talk about it. And if you want to watch these videos, I will definitely send in a link, but if you want to, just let me know. All right, so as we've already talked about natural disturbances, but this is more of a human exacerbated disturbance. All right, so we know that forests cover about 30% of the world's land area. However, in the last 30 years, the world has already lost about 1.3 square kilometers of forest. And this is only in the last 30 years, not accounting for back to the Industrial Revolution. Humans have cut down over 46% of the trees in the entire world, and specifically the Amazon has already seen over 17% in losses. One way that obviously deforestation occurs is through cutting down the trees or felling or straight up burning the trees so that there will be space for agricultural land use. Specifically in the Amazon, the trees have been burned pretty severely, and there's been an increase of 80% from 2018 in terms of human lit fires. All right, so there is another video, but in the interest
And in
of
South America tonight,
saving time, I will just send in a link to that video if you guys are interested. But I did want to get to the actual content, which is why are we cutting our forests down, even though they are vital to us. So obviously we know that that forests are integral to human and otherwise animal ecosystems throughout the world. So they're integral for us to survive, essentially. They absorb carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, like the ones that we've discussed, the ones that get released whenever humans really do anything. And they prevent those greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere and warming the climate up. Tropical trees alone, such as those in the Amazon, can provide more than 23% of climate mitigation that we need to set the goals or meet the goals set in the Paris Accords. So why are we cutting these forests down? As you can already see in the slide, one of the reasons is industry, the other is farming and livestock, and then obviously we have land logging and expansion. So one example of industry is the palm oil industry. Specifically in Malaysia and Indonesia, the palm oil industry thrives off of deforestation and cutting down these forests. Palm oil, if you guys didn't already know, can be found in everything ranging from shampoos to saltines, which are edible. And the global palm oil market was valued at 65.73 billion USD in 2015 and is expected to reach 92.84 later on this year. And specifically in the Amazon rainforest, as well as other forests as well, but in the Amazon, farms and plantations require a lot of space just because of the climate and environment. So as more tropical trees are cut down and logging for paper and wood, as well as industrial expansion happens, the forests are being cut down at a very, very high rate. All right, so why do we need to stop deforestation? So deforestation severely impacts both human and non-human ecosystems and organisms. In terms of people, nearly 250 million people survive worldwide off of forest and savanna areas for income and subsistence. And many of these people who survive for income and subsistence are poor farmers. Specifically in countries like Uganda, people rely on trees for firewood, timber, and charcoal. And as Uganda has lost over 63% of its forest cover, children are essentially being sent farther and farther away to collect firewood, and they're missing school and are essentially becoming less literate, which is very, very important for everyday life. And in terms of animals, almost 80% of the world's land animals and plants live in forests. Getting rid of these forests means less tree cover or canopy, which also increases the temperature swings throughout the day and nights. And then another reason would be natural cycles. So forests are key in maintaining various cycles that support life, such as the water cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, all of those cycles. For example, in the Amazon, it provides water to Brazilian residents and ranchers. According to a report, over 3/4 of the world's fresh water comes from forested watersheds, and the loss of these trees can severely affect water quality. So obviously, if you depend on a watershed or any sort of water source that is protected by or surrounding forest your drinking quality, the drinking quality of your water will be severely impacted, and that's very negative. That's a very negative impact, not only for the people's health, but also for agriculture and industry. And another impact is cutting down trees also adds CO2 or carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. As I've already talked on, carbon dioxide warms up the atmosphere, which drives global warming, which in turn drives climate change. According to the World Resources Institute, if deforestation were a country, it would rank third in carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, only behind China and the US. So just to recap what we've already talked about, deforestation essentially leads to a great array of negative climate change effects. So one, obviously, forests keep excess carbon out of the atmosphere, and when you cut down trees, that becomes much harder. And so the excess carbon that you could be cutting down on is obviously going to be warming up our planet even more and the atmosphere even more. And then the second one is when you cut down a tree, you create more carbon emissions because they will end up releasing what they were storing, rather by rotting on the forest floor or burning on the forest floor, as I've already discussed, because fire is one of the ways that deforestation occurs. And so because of this, deforestation causes about 10% of worldwide emissions on its own, just the act of cutting down trees and burning them. And then again, the third point is what replaces forests in these areas due to whether it's expansion or human activities, such as livestock and crops, generate great amounts of carbon and greenhouse gases themselves, which account for about a quarter of all emissions worldwide. So essentially, it's a triple negative effect that deforestation can cause. All right, so we know what the negative impacts of deforestation are we know what the negative impacts of deforestation are. So let's examine what the negative impacts of deforestation are on biodiversity. So firstly, forests are home to over 80% of terrestrial biodiversity, including plants, animals, microbes, etc. Some places, such as tropical forests especially, are very, very diverse, and they contain especially in New Guinea, for example, they can contain over 6% of the world's plants and species, and that's only one tropical rainforest alone. In addition to this, deforestation can directly lead to biodiversity loss. When animals that live in the trees no longer have habitat, and then obviously they can't relocate, so they become extinct. And this also leads to certain tree species to become extinct as well, in addition to the plant species and animal species that rely on those tree species. According to the NASA Earth Observatory, half of all 5 to 8 million species, 50 to 8 million species, 80 million species live in the rainforests. Rainforests make up about 7% of the Earth's total land area, making these areas obviously very packed with life. So as trees are being cut down and deforestation occurs, we obviously lose a great deal of habitat diversity as well as biodiversity in terms of, again, plants, animals, and other trees. In terms of wildlife, they are becoming increasingly threatened by human activities because of deforestation. We have a list of threatened species with the most comprehensive source of information on the global risk, especially of animals, fungi, and plant species. And they can be classified as either extinct in the wild, critically endangered, vulnerable, near threatened, and then least concern. And essentially, when 80% of the world's land-based animals and species, not just animals, live in the forests, they lose their homes when forests are cut down or burned, and therefore the biodiversity is going to be drastically decreased. Deforestation and fragmentation of forests has become one of the biggest drivers for extinctions across the world. In a recent study, they found that deforestation substantially increased the odds of the species being listed on the red list or the extinction, endangered, all of those classifications. If they're on the red list, they are endangered, and deforestation substantially increased the odds of those species being on the list, as the study found. And again, even small or localized destruction and deforestation can result in whole species being extinct. as many species or specialists exist in the world and small geographic locations where they will only be able to thrive in those specific areas and are not able to adapt to other areas. However, I did want to add that there is hope for the issue, even though it might sound sort of depressing to think about how deforestation and climate change has essentially depleted biodiversity in many areas. So one of the things that we can do is obviously plant a tree. We're discussing deforestation, so if you are able to, you can always plant a tree in your backyard, in your city, in your neighborhood, in a communal area. Obviously, number 2 would be to use less paper. This is pretty obvious. Then you wouldn't be contributing directly to logging and wooding industries. 3, recycle paper and cardboard. Again, this is also another sort of obvious tip. 4, use recycled products. 5, only buy sustainable wood products. And of course, sustainability isn't necessarily achievable for all people, but if you are able to, and if you have the resources to be more sustainable in your practices, especially in terms of consuming, then please do. 6, don't buy products containing palm oil. Again, this isn't necessarily viable for all people, but if you have the option to, then please restrain yourself from buying products containing palm oil. 7, reduce meat consumption. 8, do not burn firewood excessively. Again, sort of an obvious tip, but the impact is great. 9, practice ecoforestry. 10, raise awareness. 11, respect the rights of indigenous people. 12, support organizations fighting deforestation. 13, join a community forestry project. 14, help restore degraded forests. And then 15, sort of the more abstract one, sort of the greater picture is fight governmental corruption. But obviously, as people, as individuals, we'll be focusing more on the first 10-ish tips. All right, so I have another Kahoot that will end out the session before I give you guys the opportunity to ask questions. So this will be the final Kahoot. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start. Again, you guys can join as the Kahoot goes on, so no worries there. All right, so the main reason for deforestation of rainforests is, and we've discussed this, all right, good job to everybody who answered correctly. But again, it was sort of a trick question, so if you didn't get it, don't feel too bad. All right, Pradeep in the lead. All right, deforestation increases leaching and soil erosion because... All right, good job to everybody who answered correctly. All right, next question. 80% of the world's forests have already been destroyed? Question mark. right, so the answer is true, which is a very high number, which is unfortunate. All right, Pardeep in the lead. All right, what proportion of the world's rainforests are properly protected? All right, so most of you got that right. It is 20%, but I wouldn't blame you if you chose 10% or any lower. All right, G coming in strong. All right, deforestation decreases photosynthesis. What is the equation for photosynthesis? I'm just gonna skip that question. I'm sure you guys all know what the equation for photosynthesis is. All right, what percentage of the Earth's surface is covered by rainforest? All right, good job to everybody who answered correctly. All right, and this will be the last question. So what percentage of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon rainforest alone? All right, so obviously we didn't really discuss this question, but for those of you who got it right, good job. All right, so with that all being said, I don't know if there's any time to ask questions, but if you guys had any questions, I will answer them. And you can put them in the chat or talk out loud. It's up to you. All right, Giovanna.
Oh, hi. So first of all, thank you so much for the workshop. It was like really nice watching. I have typed 2 questions in the chat. So should I just read them?
Sure.
So my questions are, do the destroyers of Amazon forests and other forests have permission of the governments to cut the trees down?
All right, so generally, again, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they do, but there are illegal foresting operations that do occur. But I think that recently they have been able to legally.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. And the second question is, if the plants breathe the oxygen, but then they breathe back like the oxygen they release that day. So like they release the oxygen that day, but then they breathe their oxygen at night. How are they like essential for life on Earth? I was just like thinking about that.
So plants, okay, so photosynthesis essentially takes carbon dioxide and it creates oxygen and sugar. So they don't take in oxygen, they take out oxygen. They put out oxygen into the atmosphere. So essentially what they do is, as humans are increasing carbon emissions through like driving, industrial expansion, factories, all of those, and carbon and all of those greenhouse gases that contain carbon and carbon dioxide. Essentially what those plants are able to do is they're able to absorb the carbon dioxide, and then as a product of photosynthesis, they're able to absorb the carbon dioxide and then turn it into sugar, which is glucose, but most importantly, oxygen. So they aren't taking in oxygen necessarily, they're putting out oxygen while taking in carbon dioxide. So it's helpful for us both ways because we get oxygen to breathe, obviously, but we're also able to decrease emissions through trees and other plants. So did that answer your question?
Oh, yes, thank you. I was like confused about that. Thank you.
Of course. All right, in the chat, except tree plantation and general awareness, how can we take action against deforestation? All right, so one of the ways that we can take action is through the usage of our money. So obviously some people are not able to do this because if you're poor or if you don't have enough access to sustainable resources or more sustainable options, you will not have the ability to sort of choose what you want to do with your money. You'll be very limited. But however, if you are able to spend money on more sustainable resources or companies that practice sustainability, you should always go for that route. It's a very it's a very easy way to take action is through the usage of your money. So obviously, if companies are losing customers, in their best interest, it's best to move towards practices that are more sustainable if sustainability becomes a better indicator of where people are putting their money. Do you think composting is a good way of combating these issues? Now, I'll be honest, I don't know much about composting, but I will look into it, definitely. I would tell you to also look into it as well. I apologize, I'm not very well-versed on composting. And then how does deforestation affect the ozone layer? Again, I'm not 100% positive, but I believe, again, make sure to look it up and because I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that deforestation, which increases greenhouse gases, weakens the ozone layer, which essentially allows more harmful UV rays, I believe, into the atmosphere, or just, I believe it's more harmful. I can't remember if it's radiation or, but I just know that I believe that it weakens the atmosphere as greenhouse gases sort of penetrate the ozone layer. But again, I'm not 100% sure, so make sure to look more into that as well. All right. Are there any other questions? Again, you guys can put it into the chat. I have it open, or you can just talk out loud. It's up to you. All right, Giovanna.
So my question is actually like about the challenge that was posted in the chat. I don't know if it's like a question like specifically for Climate Cardinals or for the man impact like directly, but can I ask? And then like maybe
yeah, I'm actually not sure. So I think either Reem or Tuscano will be able to better answer your question. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so like there was like a message posted on the chat there that there was like links to put deeds that we did for SDG 15. So like, are those deeds in groups? Like there are groups of people that will post deeds and then the group will win, or is it like an individual challenge?
So basically it can be either groups or individuals. It doesn't really matter as long as you're performing a deed and submitting it and taking part in our 150 deeds challenge. However, the person who submits the most numbers of deed will be the winner, which we'll be announcing in our closing ceremony.
So but like can I will I be like not like competing, but like kind of competing with a group, or will like individuals be competing like against each other, and then groups will be competing against each other?
It would mainly be individuals.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just one last question. So to sign up for this challenge, I think I signed up on the email. Is my sign up done? Like to sign up for this deed for this challenge, we should have just signed up on the email.
Yes, so you don't really have to sign up for it. All you have to do is perform a deed and submit it to the links that I've just sent in the chat right now, and we'll receive it and keep a track of all of the deeds in.
Thank you.
And that's it for today. Thank you everyone for joining and listening in. And a special thanks to Norman, who did an incredible job. So everyone give her a huge round of applause on today's session. I learned a lot from it personally. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you guys again. And thank you, Norman. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.
All right,
That's
so thanks a lot, Nominas, again for your stellar presentation. And also thank you all the participants for listening to him and also joining in Kahoot. And I was also in one of those things. So I really enjoyed the whole session so far. And you know that by this statement, I want to close the room now. But before closing the room, I want to remind all of you to join us tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be one of the most important events what we have during this whole GWOA, which is our first open discussion forum. And our theme is how to mobilize local communities towards biodiversity conservation. And we will really have a wonderful team of panelists, and we will have people from even diversity, the people who will be joining in the upcoming COP26. We will have biologists and wildlife researcher. So that's the session what I recommend all of you not to miss. Okay, obviously join us at 1500 UTC, and we will again be sending you the link by next 1 or 2 hours. All right, so if you have any question about GWOA or any other thing related to immune impact, you can ask it now. Okay, Mr. Cody, you may stop recording.
Yes, and just to finally add on, a quick reminder that our 150 deeds challenge, as well as the composting challenge, is running, and we have received a couple of submissions, and the winners for all of them will be announced in our closing ceremony. So please ensure to take part in it and have fun.